Hello, coders. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It is episode 117, I believe, 117. It is September the 16th, and today we're going to be talking about Symfony and Symfony 6 in particular, and what it means to the PHP world going forward. We'll talk about we'll touch on perhaps the upgrade path, what will be affected, what is happening, when things will happen, that kind of jazz. Hey, thank you for joining, Martin. I appreciate that. That's nice to see you again. I feel like I haven't done this in a while. I think last week I didn't do the podcast. Well, there was a week that I didn't do the podcast for some reason. And I've also not been doing a lot of live streaming recently just because I've been super busy doing other things. The last podcast I did, there was a bit of issue with the visuals and the video. I'm hoping that it's better this time. However, last time I did get the audio, and that will be pushed out to the podcast in due course. I'm a little bit behind in publishing podcast episodes. I am aware of that, and that will be sorted out this weekend. Fingers crossed. So before we get into Symfony 6, let's talk a little bit about some housekeeping in terms of how to code well and other bits and pieces that I've been doing. So if you followed along to the live streams that I have been doing this September, you may realize that we haven't been doing the howtocodewell.net site. That's actually taken a bit of a back seat. We're actually working on an e-com site at the moment. And we'll probably continue doing that because I've got some tests that I need to do. It's kind of functionally already there, but I want to write some acceptance type tests just to give myself a little bit more confidence. The client, i.e. my wife, we need to go through and do some content stocking. It's a site for her to sell baked goods. Baked by Pen, it's called. So that's taking more of a precedent than the howtocodewell.net site. However, that is still going on. I was actually working on that a few evenings ago. I'm actually putting in place a contact form for that. So when that does get released, whenever that may be, and it's not looking like it's going to get released this side of this year, unfortunately. Because I want to focus on this Silas site. That needs to go out first, I believe. But we are using technology, we're sharing technology across the two sites, even though they're very different. So for instance, I've been doing a lot of Selenium testing on the howtocodewell.net site, whereas on the Silas site, which is the ecom site, I've opted to use Cypress.io. And now I've got worked out how to actually integrate JavaScript with the database, in the sense of, after the test is done, tear down the database and bring it back up to a given stable position. I'm now actually seeing the benefits of Cypress over Selenium. So I'm thinking that once this Silas site is up and ready, we may look at using Cypress as an end-to-end testing framework instead of Selenium on the howtocodewell.net framework, or howtocodewell.net site. And that I will probably wrap this up into another episode to talk about it in more depth. But I do feel like Cypress is probably the way to go. I did feel like Selenium was probably better than Cypress at certain things, but now I'm actually getting into the weeds of Cypress. I can actually see the benefits outweighing the negatives. So anyway, that's how that's going. So we're probably going to continue on with that ecom site for a few more weeks, maybe months, and then get back onto How to Code Well after that. I thought I would just give everybody a bit of notice as to why I'm doing an ecom site rather than the e-learning site. Anyway, let's move on to Symfony 6. Symfony 6. Just checking on the chat. Thank you, Martin. Great to be here. I'm glad you are here. Playing with the DOM. Awesome. Not sure how to upload. Oh, nice. Well, if you've got any questions, and I will say to everybody in the audience, if anybody has any questions, then do check out the howtocodewell.net Discord server. There is a coding help channel there. If you have any code that you want to discuss with anybody, then do check that out. Let's move straight on to Symfony 6, because this is a topic that I think is incredibly important with the PHP in the PHP world. Because there have been some decisions that have been made recently, which is really going to shape PHP, I think, going forward. Now, first of all, I want to give a couple of dates. So I want to throw some dates at you. So we're on Symfony 5. That is the current version of Symfony. And the long-term stable release is Symfony 5.4. They seem to use .4 as the LTS. So it will be released in November 2021, although I do think that you can get it at the moment. It's got an end of bug fixes date set to November 2024, and it then has an end of security fixes at 2025. So in 2025, Symfony 5 will therefore become end of life, because that's the LTS, that's the long-term standing stable release there. So up comes the new contender, which is Symfony 6. Now the way the Symfony does it is when the LTS gets released of the previous version, the new version gets released as well. So the bleeding edge version gets released whilst the LTS version, the previous version, is running. That way you've got your long-term stable version running alongside the bleeding edge, and it gives people enough time to jump between versions, because when you're jumping between two major versions, you've got to take into consideration all the breaking changes going forward. Because what happens is when, say, Symfony 5 is released, all the way up to Symfony 5.4, there are all sorts of deprecations, and those you get deprecated warnings, right? And then what happens is on the next major version, so in this case Symfony 6, those deprecations are no longer deprecated; they are not there anymore. They will error if you're still using those things. So the idea is it gives you a smooth upgrade path. So what you would do is, let's say you're not on 5.4 at the moment, but you want to get on to 6. What you would do is you would upgrade your current project all the way up to 5.4, analyze what needs to be changed in terms of your deprecations, fix those, and then move on to Symfony 6. That way you've got an easier progression. Okay, so Symfony 6 will be released in November 2021, and its end of support for Symfony 6.0 will be July 2022. The LTS version of Symfony 6, which is 6.4, will be released in November 2023. And the end of bug fixes will be November 2026. And therefore, the end of security fixes is 2027. What they do is they give you an extra year. So a year's worth of bug, well, in this case, it's 3 years worth of bug fixes, and then an extra year on top for security fixes. So by 2027, we would be focusing on Symfony 7. If that roadmap continues as planned. So the takeaway there is Symfony 6 will be released in about 2 and a bit months. To the bleeding edge, Symfony 6.0 will be released. Although you can get it now, right? You can use the bleeding edge now if you want to. Although I don't recommend putting it into production right now, but it should be production ready in a few months. And then after that, it will it will become LTS in 2023. So, not that far away. Okay, that's enough dates. Let's not worry about dates for now. The important thing there is that you get an overlap, and the emphasis is that Symfony 6 is coming very, very quickly. That's the emphasis, although you still have the LTS of Symfony 5.4. So let's talk about what is happening in the wonderful world of Symfony 6. What's going on? Why am I causing such a fuss here? Well, it really boils down to the versioning of PHP that are the technical requirements of these framework versions. So Symfony 5.4, which is the LTS, it requires PHP 7.2.5, 7.2.5 or higher. So now, I've worked on myself projects where we've taken a PHP 5 application and we've turned it into a PHP 7.4 application. And in doing so, we've upgraded Symfony versions and so forth. Where it gets interesting, though, is when we look at Symfony 6. Because Symfony 6 now requires PHP 8.0.2 or higher. So PHP 7.4 isn't going to cut it anymore. Symfony 6 requires PHP version 8.0.2. Now, this gives us a lot of tools and a lot of toys to play with. So, for instance, union types, static return types, constructor property promotion, match statement, null safe operators, and the list goes on and on and on. All of these new goodness. PHP 8 is geared towards becoming type safe. It's becoming more of a type safe programming language. But because Symfony 6 is PHP 8 now, there is more emphasis on using all of these toys in PHP, what that PHP 8 offers, including the type safeness, And the reason why I'm picking on Symfony and not doing any kind of the same thing on like WordPress or anything like this is because Symfony has a huge amount of components that are shared amongst a huge amount of other things, right? So other applications, other frameworks, they all, or a lot of them at least, rely on components from Symfony. Symfony itself, the framework, is built up by these components. And then you have Laravel, you've got even WordPress, you've got other applications, you've got your other frameworks, perhaps your micro services or whatever that have specific components of Symfony, let's say. And if you want to get to Symfony 6, you have now a requirement to upgrade to PHP 8. Now, I'm making this sound like a negative, and it's not. It really isn't. This is a really good thing for PHP. But but the way these type safenesses are working, in the sense of they're not always upstream, some of them are downstream as well. They're going to impact other open source projects. So this is bigger than Symfony. This now boils over to the rest of the PHP community, because enforcing the need for PHP 8 and enforcing the need to have these both your parameters and your return types to be type safe, then you are putting a requirement on these other open source projects or other applications or what have you to up their game and improve and be compatible with these new changes in the components. Okay, so Symfony 6, therefore, will become the biggest change, in my opinion, to the Symfony framework since the release of Symfony 2. Now, I was a Symfony dev back in the Symfony 1 days, using Propel or not, it was before Twig days. And I've upgraded things from Symfony 1 to Symfony 2, and that, trust me when I say, that was a full rewrite. Luckily, how things have evolved and the dedication of the maintainers of Symfony, it's not that severe and that harsh to do an upgrade from 5 to 6. There is a smoother upgrade path that even has a script that is called the patch type declaration script. It's in Symfony 5.4 plus, and it will go over your code, and it will even adjust your code to make it more compatible for Symfony 6. So they've done a lot of great work to make this transition more easy for people. It's not easy at all, but that's probably the wrong word. More smoother than it used to be. And they've even said that they may postpone certain type safe changes until Symfony 7, as this could cause pain for maintainers of open source projects. So the pain part here, I mean, this will all come out in the wash, but the things that I can see is when you've got when you're extending a Symfony component, and that component has a different return type to what you're used to, or it now has a new return type, or it has a new types for in the parameters, all of those things. So I kind of foresee, and this is me putting my sort of like my disaster hat on, I suppose you could call it. This isn't supposed to be doom and gloom, but I foresee in the coming years, in the coming months up to the coming year or two, we're going to see a lot of major changes, major version changes in the PHP world, in open source projects that rely on these components to make themselves as compatible as they possibly can be for Symfony 6, to be more compatible with the components that are going to change. Now, unfortunately, just as how software goes, this will cause unavoidable breaking changes in certain things. I believe that there are certain circumstances where those things will be unavoidable. Also, if the maintainers don't keep an eye on this and they don't deal with the change well, then there will be breaking changes. So there's unavoidable and there's avoidable breaking changes that will happen in the next few years, in my opinion. My advice would be to try things and test things as early as possible, and let the community of your open source project or whatever application to be aware of these changes coming through. And this is all for the benefit of the good. This is all for the greater good. So I've got a list here of things that could be affected. So adding return types may have a big impact on Symfony components used by frameworks and other tools. This may cause major versions to be created and roadmaps to be altered. If this isn't handled carefully, we may see breaking changes, and there could even be situations where breaking changes are unavoidable. This will cause short-term pain, but I believe this will push the PHP community as a whole forward, which is definitely no bad thing. PHP 8 is fantastic. It's a brilliant version of PHP. It's the best version of PHP, in my opinion. I think they've done a tremendous job with it. We just have to, I'm talking from experience of working on legacy applications. If you've got a legacy application which is closed source, then you really need to take this time as an opportunity to make sure that your application is ready. And by ready, I mean get your unit tests in place, increase your code coverage, write acceptance tests. Those things are good to have anyway, but make sure that these are properly dialed down. This is great for the contractors, because I would imagine that there's going to be a lot of projects in the coming futures where there'll be a requirement of a contractor or freelancer to upgrade systems. That's always a good thing. I'm a contractor myself. That's always the software evolves. It's always a great thing for us guys. But get in there nice and early. So make sure that your tests are in place, your end-to-end tests are done. Make sure that any business critical things are properly covered. Run static analysis and increase the level of what's the word? Increase that. So, for example, if you're using PHP Stand like I do, then increase the level of difficulty that it analyzes the code. Fix as many bugs, as many issues as you possibly can when you do that. If you're using Symfony 5, make sure that you upgrade all the way up to Symfony 5.4. Basically, rinse and repeat, test, static and analyze. Just try and get your system as in shape as possible. Then run the patch type declaration script, document the return types, fix any missing return types, use PHP 8 images and make sure that they are as up to date as possible. So if you're not using Docker right now and you're using maybe like a LAMP stack, this is an opportunity for you to use Docker. Add parameter types when you've got to the Symfony 6 version, when you've got that. Keep running your static analysis, keep running your tests, fix any issues, and basically do that as a rinse and repeat cycle. And you want to be making sure that you do all of these things and committing all these changes separately from features, separately from bug fixes, separately from other things, because upgrading shouldn't be thought of as a one-way trip. Believe you me, there's many times where I've tried to do an upgrade, it hasn't worked, I've had to revert, and if there's any new features within that commit, it gets very, very tricky. You end up having to cherry pick code, and it's not nice. You basically want to get the code base to a point where you can do a feature freeze, try and do an upgrade. If that doesn't work, roll it back, do it another day. But what you don't want to do is roll it back and then have to unpick feature code or other changes to the code base that is going on alongside this upgrade. So what I tend to do is do this all in a separate branch. In fact, that's how we moved to Symfony 5 on the howtocodewell.net site, is we created a separate branch, and we also used that branch to upgrade to PHP 8 as well. That way I could work on the features in another branch and other bug fixes in another branch, get those to a stable point, and then merge that back into the upgrade branch. So it was always going that way rather than the other way, if that makes sense. So yeah, I hope this hasn't been a bit of a doom and gloom thing. It shouldn't have been. I really didn't want it to be, but as a software developer, I know the pain that's involved in doing these upgrades. So just get ready, just get prepared. And if you are someone who has an open source project and you want to get involved, then you can try Symfony 6 now. There are all sorts of GitHub issues open for you to put in any known issues that you discover, and be a part of the community. It's a great time to be a PHP developer at the moment. It's a fantastic time, really good. Really, really, really good time to be a PHP dev. So, thank you very much. That's my chat on how to get ready for Symfony 6. I'm sure we'll be talking about this as it goes on, as it becomes closer and closer to getting onto Symfony 6, and I cannot wait to do that on the How to Code Well site. And of course, I will be upgrading it live, so you can come and join and watch the pain. No, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be great. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. So this weekend, on Sunday, I'm going to be streaming probably that ecom site, the Silas site. I'm probably going to be using Cypress IO, and we're going to be probably writing some end-to-end tests around maybe the login, maybe the register of that ecom site, perhaps. I've got it to a point, like as mentioned, where it's sort of functionally sound, but I would like to have some end-to-end tests that give me a decent level of confidence. So, for instance, when Silas gets updated, I then have something to verify that the updates have actually gone through okay and I haven't screwed up the site. Cool. If there is a takeaway here, it is to test your damn code. Anyway, I'm going to shoot off. Happy coding, everybody, and I'll see you again on Sunday afternoon at 14:30 GMT.